Hi guys, welcome back to Iris After Hours. I feel like it's been a while.
It has been a while, and we are super excited because we have Charles Stock with us today.
Woo!
Charles, welcome to Iris After Hours.
Hey, I'm glad to be here.
Man, Charles, if you guys don't know Charles Stock, this guy is a hidden treasure. Well, he's not very hidden if you're from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, because he has a big church there.
A treasure on display.
Where he leads hundreds and thousands of people. And he's a great friend of Iris. You've been to, how many times have you been to Pemba?
I think about 5 times.
Yeah, and he's had a huge impact on all of our lives. I feel like Charles is a father in the faith, a father to us. And I cannot wait to pull some gold out of you today, Charles, because he's the author of the book Glow in the Dark.
Glow in the Dark.
He has a theology
gotta talk about that one.
Exactly, a theology of joy, which is one of your main things. Yeah. A new book coming out about Obed Edom, so watch out. That's going to be out soon. And just an amazing mentor and faithful servant of the Lord, saved out of the Jesus movement back in the 70s.
Yeah.
We've heard your testimony, and we're going to dig into some of that today.
All right.
But Charles, thank you so much for taking time out of your crazy busy schedule to join us here.
You're welcome. It's really, it's something we wanted to do. We've been talking about it for a few years, so I'm glad I finally made it.
And for braving traffic from LAX.
Oh, man.
Which is the real test of love.
And I have to ask
really
straight up, before you even start, I want you to come back for part 2.
Okay.
So next time you're in LA, we're going to do this again.
Okay. It's a deal.
I know we can't capture enough of you today in one podcast.
I'd love to. And I'll be back.
Come on.
Back a few times a year.
First question. How did you encounter or run into or connect with Heidi and Roland and Iris Ministries?
Oh, man, this is great. Well, I think it was in 1998 or 99, Randy Clark had the first Voice of the Apostles conference in St. Louis. He invited Bill Johnson and Heidi Baker and a guy from Germany whose name's slipping my mind right now. But anyway, he invited me to come. And Randy said, Heidi's like a legend, already, even though she wasn't as famous then as she is now. And so Ann and I were very excited about this because Randy had talked about how phenomenal she was. He told us the story of the encounter in Toronto and, do you want the nation? And she cried out yes, and told us some of the backstory. So literally we arrived Thursday afternoon or something at this hotel, and there was no one from the conference to give us a ride. So we said, well, we don't want to wait till tonight. We want to go today. Yeah. And we found a taxi driver, and he guessed at what church it might be, and
really?
He was right. Yeah, it was really funny.
You guys weren't getting the VIP treatment.
No, I mean, Randy's ministry was very small at this time,
It's a Holy Spirit led, even with the taxis.
No, but now it's like so
pretty
good.
Slick, yeah.
But so we were so excited, and we walked in. It was an afternoon session, and we opened the door it was in this church, maybe the room seated about 300 people. We walk in the door, and your mom was up on the stage like this.
Whoa.
Just kill him, God. Kill him. Just kill him, God. And there's all these pastors they're just like slain. They're on the platform, on their faces. People are weeping. And the presence in that room was like,
whoa.
And I remember saying these words to Ann. I've read about people like this before, but I've never been in a room with one.
Wow.
And it felt like, being in the room with Hudson Taylor or Amy Carmichael or the presence of God was awesome. It didn't matter what was being said, because what was what being said. It was an encounter with heaven. Yeah. So we met, and met Bill and Benny the same time I met your mom. And a year later.
Oh, so you didn't know Bill and Benny then either?
No, it was the first time we met them. And Bill wasn't really very famous then, so we had connected a little bit with Randy. But in 2001, Randy moved to Harrisburg, and I was going on a team of 12 pastors that Randy was going to lead, but because he was moving to Harrisburg, he said, look, I can't go to Mozambique right now. Would you take the team in my place? And I thought, great, I've never even been on a Randy Clark trip. How am I going to
Had you been to Africa yet?
Yeah, we'd been to Zimbabwe quite a bit. We have some friends in Harare that we did renewal meetings all over Zimbabwe.
Awesome.
In the middle 90s. But so we went there and got thrown into the deep end of the pool and just loved it. And so like a year or two later, your mom invited me to come back. And so I came you get off the plane and Heidi, especially this is at Zimpetu. And
oh, wow.
you just
that's back in the day.
Go to a meeting, like you get off the plane and you go to a meeting. So come on, we're going to the meeting.
That is sojourn or dedication.
Yes.
Or we just built this basketball court ceremony. Yeah.
So we go to this meeting and I see the Portuguese up there. It says "Catch the Fire" in Portuguese. And I said, "Oh, wow, looks like you did you just have a conference?" And your mom says, "No, we're having a conference." I said, "Really? Who are the speakers?" She said, "You are." And George and Banoff and Leslie Ann Layton. And I said, "Wow, who's speaking tonight?" Because I was thinking, like, if it's me, I should come up with a message here. She says, "Georgian." So it was really fun. So we met, we stayed at the house there, and it was just a connection.
Oh
it was a lot of fun.
That's awesome.
A lot of fun. And the result of that was that Georgian moved to Harrisburg, also. So Randy moved to Harrisburg in 2001, and Georgian moved to Harrisburg in 2006. And their families, not just the guy. But,
Gosh.
But anyway, after
and
that...
Harrisburg, I found out today, Chrissy, did you know it's the capital of Pennsylvania?
I did know that, Nathan.
Oh, you knew that?
Nathan's actually... I did, yes. It's very fun high school fact.
Yeah, but he was an Australian, so
Nathan's
I'm a new
very
American.
excited
I'm
about
a new immigrant.
geography.
I'm not an immigrant. Well, am I
But
still
you
an
knew
immigrant?
the
If I'm a citizen,
capital
am I
of
still an
Tasmania,
immigrant?
I think you're still an immigrant.
Am I still an immigrant even though I'm a citizen now?
You're a citizen.
Right?
Yeah.
Oh, does that still make me an immigrant? Am I still an immigrant? I don't know. I'm both.
Yeah.
Both and.
I'm
You're
like
first
looking at Elisha
generation
off camera.
American.
I
Come
don't know.
on, that's it.
Yes.
Come on.
Yes.
Yeah, so
Uh,
very good.
do you have any wild bush stories? You were saying the last time you were in Mozambique with me and Brock, we were out in the bush recording, and you commented on a story about a woman who had leprosy.
Oh, yeah, but I think you weren't there. We decided you weren't there.
On the boat one, right?
Yeah,
I
that
wasn't
was
there.
on the
Oh,
boat.
was the leprosy story on that one?
I think it was. They were all kind of a blur, but this is the woman, and your mom shows this clip a lot. This woman had leprosy. She's sitting in the dust. And it was the boat time, because I remember Sean was there. And so this lady, your mom just started praying for her. And she was crippled and kind of crawling around, scooting around, and your mom got her up dancing, and they danced, and it's all in the dust and the light, and how it's one of
And you were there.
Yeah.
Gosh.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Was that one of the highlights of your trip there, you think?
Yeah, that was special. There. That was really special.
Awesome.
It was we had a lot. I mean, my first trip there, we went out in the bush. There was a big conference, and your dad flew, and I got invited to go in the plane, which was nice because I on the way back I rode in the van. It took like 8 hours.
That's a step up.
And so we flew to this village, and that was my first time in the bush.
Come on.
We landed on the landing strip that looked like a road that had kind of a turn in it, as we're coming in. It's like, this will be interesting. And so that night we had this massive conference, showed the Jesus film. There were about 6,000 people there. I can't remember the name of the place. But it was in Mozambique. People had walked there from Malawi. People had walked 3 days.
Yeah.
It was at a World Vision Center out in the bush was where we stayed. And so we're showing this Jesus film, and the chaos in the crowd was I couldn't believe it. I mean, like it was culture shock for an American, like the way that the Mozambican pastors were dealing with the children, and it just was like waves of humanity, and the projector kept breaking down, and the generator would go out, and I kind of thought, like, they're probably going to cancel this meeting, because it's just too chaotic. But because it's my first time.
The show must go on.
Never.
So at the
cancel.
end, so your mom said, "Okay, you're going to preach tonight." And I said, "Okay." And she said, "You ever preach at a black church?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "Tell stories and be dramatic." They like that. So I had a really great time, just kind of a download of the gospel in terms of creation and stuff. There was, of course, a huge response. I remember there was a woman who got on the stage with her baby. She came up with the stage with her baby. And we prayed the baby was healed, and they were all dancing around, and they went home. But this woman only had like a cloth on her, and the wind was blowing, and it kept blowing the cloth off. And your mom said, "That's all she owns." That's the whole thing. It was kind of a dramatic moment, and just there were a lot of healings that night. That was probably of all my times in Mozambique. I think that trip, there were many amazing things happened, and they were all like firsts. They were all like first time things, and that night, I remember I went to see Tom and Brenda Jones, who were on the trip, and Brenda brought all this kind of like a pharmacy of medicines with her. And I went to see them because my stomach was getting messed up. And
also about right.
Yeah, because we had been, we'd gone to one village where they just had 2 candles on a table in the middle, and we ate half-cooked chicken on rice, that was... Then we went to another place, and your mom just said, "Just eat it," So we're eating this half-cooked goat stuff. So this is like, we've had this great night, and I'm
rare. It's called rare.
Totally amazing,
medium rare
thing that God would do there. And then later, I'm like, and I'm talking to Tom and Brenda, and suddenly I have to get up and run out the door, because it's
one of those times,
and it's like. It is ejective, and I'm hacking. And Heidi and Elisha were sleeping in the room next to where Tom and Brenda were, and so I'm there retching, and I hear them laughing so hard inside their room. They didn't know it was me. They just said, "Oh, new missionaries getting baptized." So that was a lot of fun.
Oh,
you can edit that out if that's not appropriate.
No, it's a solid initiation.
Yes, come on.
It was a lot of fun.
Life.
Get ready, guys, for your trip to
I'd have to say that especially the first few times, it was all wonder. Just the wonder of being there and seeing the response of people, seeing your mom's relentless evangelism, like every person we contacted, taxi drivers, anybody that came within the zone.
In the zone.
It was fair game.
Yeah.
She was she was evangelizing.
Come on.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
So awesome.
Yeah.
You said Nathan that one of Charles's main messages is theology of joy.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Can you talk to us a bit about that for people who maybe haven't heard you that much?
Okay. Well, I think this happened partly because what really converted me was the presence of God. We were hippies, kind of pursuing Eastern religions, trying to have perfect karma so we could have a great incarnation or something, whatever our goal was, not to mock that. But we were very serious about it. And so it's partly like salvation by diet, so I'd found this real pure water, and I was a river guide, and I found this spring dripping into the river.
River guide, what do you mean?
I took people through whitewater rapids on a river. This is a perfect hippie job.
Oh my
This
gosh!
is awesome.
What a prefiguring of what you do now, because you're still a river guide in this.
Yeah, so
river called the river.
I'm
Whoa!
on this river
First in the
trip with
natural,
these
then in the
people,
spirit.
and
Just saying.
come under this cliff and there's a spring dripping off the cliff. So you do things, it's kind of entertainment when you're a river guide. So you get everybody to collect water and you drink this amazing limestone sweet water. So we traced it back to its source. And so we would go there and collect water every week or so for our personal use in glass jugs, because you couldn't buy Evian or Fiji or anything in those days. But we wanted to really have pure everything. And so anyway, the electrical system in our car broke down on one of these trips, and some Christians helped us out at this little country church called Table Mountain Chapel on Rawhide Road in Jamestown, California.
Come on.
It's like the foothills of the Sierras. And so they helped us, they preached the gospel to us. And
what were you thinking?
Well, I just thought, cool, man.
You were pretty open, right?
Yeah, but I wasn't convicted, I thought, we're just doing this, I got a lot of friends that quit taking LSD, now they're doing yoga, and so I'm sure they were depressed by our response. But here's the thing, God is always working, even if we don't feel like he is. And so at the end of the time, I wanted to pay them the $2 back they charged our battery for us while they were sharing the gospel. And the guy just laughed at me. And I said, really, man, I want to pay back. And he says, well, come to church sometime, you can put the money in the offering if you want to pay it back. So on the way home, I said, Dan, we have to go to church. She said, why? I said, karma, it's like, I want to have good karma.
Karma.
So we started looking for a church. We didn't know, like churches were different. So we lived higher in the mountains. So we found a church that had a night meeting because I worked.
And were you driving a combi van?
Yeah, Volkswagen combi, just purple.
Yeah. Whoa! Let me just say, whoa.
Yep.
So we went to a night meeting and heard testimonies and got invited to a young people's meeting that met on another night. So we went to this meeting. And this would be like a Jesus people meeting, and a lot of young people sitting on the floor, a few guitars, playing songs,
long hair,
giving testimonies.
70s, real 70s outfit, because this was the 70s.
Yeah, it was early.
Come on, I'm just saying, guys.
So
this is like feature the scene. This is going to be. Can we turn this into a film?
Okay.
This could be our first Iris Media feature film, The Life of Charles Stock.
And
come on.
So so when they would sing, I could feel this feeling, and I called it a natural high. I didn't know it was the presence of God, but I loved the feeling, and it was really what I'd been looking for, like following gurus, doing radical, revolutionary politics, all the Berkeley stuff.
Wow, you were involved in all that.
Yeah, in riots and everything. I wasn't angry, but I was. You were looking for answers, and so.
Gosh, that was crazy back in those days.
So I thought, and they didn't take an offering. So we thought, well, we should come back the next week, So we came back.
That's amazing.
And
so
after a few weeks,
sweet.
and I started telling, we lived in a house with about 15 people. And I said, you guys, you should go to this meeting. It is the best natural high you've ever felt. And
You're evangelizing.
Yeah, and I said, you don't have to be a Jesus freak, So after a few weeks, and I noticed if I got closer to the guy leading the singing, the worship leader, but I didn't know that term, that it was thicker, So I was drawing, because here's the thing. Every human being is created in the image of God.
Yeah.
And so we attach to joy.
Whoa.
And joy, in his presence is fullness of joy, but joy is the effect of unconditional love.
Wow.
So when you're in the presence of someone who unconditionally accepts and values you, if you can receive it, it goes to something deep inside you, and it's what we're all born for. Like if in his presence is fullness of joy, we're actually created for joy, and we will attach to joy, which is why people can attach to the wrong thing, and why sad religion is really sad, because it's not demonstrating God. But anyway, so back to our story. We're there. I don't know all this. I'm just feeling like, man, this is so good. And people are giving testimonies, and we actually wouldn't sing worship to Jesus. We would sing praise God, because I believed in God, and I believed Jesus was great man, but I didn't believe he was God at that point.
Yeah.
And so we would hum the Jesus lines, so we wouldn't be hypocrites. Didn't want to have bad karma, and and of course, some songs had Jesus in them a lot, so we were like, and Anne says she wasn't so into. I hummed the Jesus lines. She sang them, but I was like,
strict.
Yeah, I want this to be totally sincere. And so anyway, after about 3 weeks of that, God did a number of other things, but he used music. We ran into some street musicians in San Francisco where we heard the music, and we followed the music several blocks. We had gone to get wedding rings because we had made this plan on the winter solstice that we would get married on the summer solstice.
Wow.
And this is you and Anne?
Yeah, and this is like April
BC,
1972,
before Christ,
early May. And so God's intersecting us, because he's what we've been looking for, but we don't know it. So finally, this day hit me. I read a testimony in this Christian newspaper these street musicians in San Francisco gave us of like my cosmic twin, some guy in Seattle. I was in Berkeley, thought, nobody could find the truth here. It's too crazy, too many riots. He was in Seattle, same thing. They moved to the Cascades. They opened this macrobiotic restaurant, and which I was following this diet.
Yeah, this is a legit diet. Yeah.
Yeah, it was
pure mountain
brown
spring
rice
water,
and
macrobiotics.
Yeah, and then on top of that, we spent the winter of 1971 reading a book, Autobiography of a Yogi by Paramahansa Yogananda, who has a temple down in Encinitas, the Self-Realization Foundation. So I'm reading this book, and whatever it says to do, we do. And actually, in there, he said, one of the things was to find a spiritual community, which is why we start, like we were open to there's no ashrams around here. We should go to this Christian meeting. And then on top of that, isn't this awesome? So this guy in the testimony, he was reading this book. They're praying this prayer that God would send them a teacher to show them their guru, which means way. Guru in Sanskrit means way.
Right.
Jesus is the way. And so they pray this prayer, and this Christian starts coming to their restaurant, ordering a bowl of brown rice, eating it with chopsticks, and reading the Bible, and they recognized he was the leader, the teacher. And so he introduced him to Jesus. When I read this, that finally smashed all my resistance. And I got down on a yoga mat and said, Jesus, I've tried everything else. I've never tried you. If you'll show me you're real, I'll follow you. Wow. So I called Anne. She was at her mom's house in San Francisco. And she said, that's amazing. I prayed a very similar prayer this morning. I said, Jesus, look, I will try being a Christian for 6 months and see if it works. That was like her. So can you imagine, here we are, and God, the God of the universe says, okay. And he's so humble, it's
oh my God.
And we didn't know how to do it. And I had been witnessed to so many times in Berkeley and by Christians, but I always resisted. And now the presence in his presence, you find out who he is, and so we prayed this prayer. And so we go, she comes back up to the mountains, and we go to this Christian meeting, and we're going to sing Jesus, And so it's coming.
Yeah, the song's coming. It says, the lyrics coming.
Yeah, Jesus, my Jesus. And the week before I would have hummed it, but that week we sang it. Jesus, my Jesus. And when we sang it, we both had the same sensation, like warm oil poured from the top of our head to the sole of our feet. And so within just within a couple weeks, our life was revolutionized. We were at meetings all the time. So these meetings were amazing, like right around the time we prayed that prayer. But once we prayed the prayer, we had seen people healed. I had Christians pray for me and been healed. And, but I just figured, there's many ways to God.
Yeah.
It's a good New Ager. And so I didn't want to become a Christian just because I got healed.
Yeah.
And, but now his presence was different than anything I felt in any other thing. And so now we're hooked on this, and we're in all these meetings. Well, right around this time, you asked me about this because the story's in the book. Yes. So we would go to this meeting every week.
This is a great
and it
story.
became kind of the center of our life because we worked on the weekends because we were river guides, and Ann helped with she did stuff for the company and would be on some of the trips. But we're always busy on Sunday mornings, which might have been good because I don't know if I would have connected with Sunday morning church culture.
Wow, isn't that interesting?
But so we're in this
God sort of
spiritual, a lot of young people, very similar background. They all have King James Bibles, and they're quoting them, and and so, and we're singing all these scripture choruses, like even before we're saved, we're singing. We'd go around in our purple Volkswagen Combi.
In the Combi van, mate.
Singing. There was this song. Seek ye the Lord while he may be found. It's Isaiah 55. Call ye upon him while he's near. Let the wicked forsake his ways, and the unrighteous man his thoughts. Let him return to the Lord. And he will have mercy on him. And he will abundantly pardon. I'm glad I turned my phone off. But we're prophesying to ourselves while we're singing these songs that we hear in these meetings. Because,
amazing.
Yeah, because it was something inside us that was hungering for this. So one of these meetings we went to, and this one was like, this sealed the deal. There were these two guys and a gal. Heidi was her name, and Rocky and Keith. And they were all amazing musicians and worship leaders. And they went up in the mountains to worship and to write songs. And they drove off the highway down, 8 miles of dirt road, down to this river, parked their pickup truck, climbed down to this beach on a river, and they're there all day singing, and they were all brilliant musicians writing songs. Well, a school bus full of hippies drives up on a dirt road across the river and parks, and all these, there's like 20, 30 hippies that get out of the school bus, and they go down, and there might have been 2 school buses, but because it was like a favorite vehicle, old school buses, and you strip out all the seats and you turn them into like campers, and you could live in them, drive it. It was the original RVs, right?
Come on.
So
awesome.
all these hippies are across the river on another beach, and they all take off their clothes and they start skinny dipping. And so these guys are going, come on, we have to go. So they're climbing up the cliff, and Heidi, whose name was Heidi Jolly, not Heidi Baker, but kind of had the spirit of it. She said, I think that we're blowing it. We need to go back down there on that beach and worship God and preach the gospel, because those people need to hear the gospel.
Come on.
So they go back down and they're worshiping, and some of the ones that are hungry kind of swam across the river to be close, and the ones that are mocking are like staying away. And so several got saved,
isn't it?
There, and then they went across the river and got their clothes. But there was a teenage boy and a young single mom who said, "Look, we don't want to. Could you give us a ride? Because we don't want to. We know everything's going to happen here later tonight, and we don't want to be here." And they said, "Sure." So they climb up the cliff. They get to the pickup truck, and it's an old, like 1953 Chevy pickup truck with not flat tires, with bald tires, but one of them's flat, and they don't have a spare. It's a front tire, and so they think, oh man, we're going to have to like take this wheel off and roll it or carry it up to the highway like 5 or 8 miles uphill on dirt roads, and then hitchhike to a service station to have the tire repaired, and then come back, and it's just like, oh, this is gonna take forever. So Heidi is in the van, and she has her head on the dashboard, and she's just singing like, oh, Jesus, help us. So outside, Keith and Rusty are jacking the truck up, getting ready to take the tire off. And this kid who's been saved like for 20 minutes, he's a teenager, he says, well, why don't you guys pray and ask God to fix the tire? And they said, okay, and just kind of,
all right, new guy.
Like, yeah, okay, sure. So Jesus, would you just heal the tire? And Heidi's inside the truck, and she feels the truck go like this, and she thinks they just jacked it up, but they didn't jack it up. God filled it up with air. Whoa. And they all jump in the truck and say, come on. And they drove from there right to this meeting that we were at, this night meeting that we'd have. So we're in there, we've been there for like 20 minutes or so, and suddenly there's this big hubbub because they've made it to the meeting in the truck. And they burst in and they tell the story. Oh my God. And we all jumped up and went out and touched the tire, So
that's
it's
amazing.
like, it sealed it. It's like, okay. Because people will argue theories and you talk to atheists or you talk to people that don't, they think there's something messed up with the gospel or with Christians.
Yeah.
And it's always theoretical.
Yeah.
But it's like when you have these kind of miraculous experiences, you just know, like,
it's undeniable.
What are you talking about?
Whoa.
And so that was stunning.
Wow.
Charles, we're nearly out of time, but I just want to ask you, your story is amazing, from 1972 and encountering the presence of God to 2017 now. Yeah. And you've lived from 72, you've lived walking with the Lord. Yeah. What is it like now with the Lord? How does it, and how has the journey been? Is the present still?
Yes. Yeah. That's
what you're after.
Yeah, I'm still after the presence.
Wow.
And that's what what characterizes the LifeCenter and all the ministries that we've sent out is just this. It's like the currency or something of it. It is the presence, the encounter, and people. We have these things similar to Bethel. Kind of things where people drive on the property and get healed.
Wow.
And, just like when nobody's there, just there's something that happens. People walk in and they'll weep for a week or a month. They just keep coming back weeping, and they're encountering an intensity of beauty. And, we don't experience this unconditional love, appreciation, acceptance. It's more than just like you say unconditional love, and what does that mean? But it's like this awareness at the deepest level that you're entirely valued, loved, and accepted and longed for by God. We long for Him because He longs for us. Our thirst for Him. It is generated by His thirst for us. And so all these things, I didn't know that then. I just thought like, wow, this is what I've been looking for. But it's kept us in the race, because you can't quit. You can't get bitter.
Yeah.
So you learn to forgive, and you learn that. And of course, most people, and probably most of the Irish community has experienced disappointment, or it feels like betrayal, even if it's your fault. When it's happening, it feels like betrayal. Maybe 5 years later you realize, well, I guess I did have something to do with that.
Yeah.
But through those things, we had this cataclysmic thing that happened in 80 86 and 87, and that resulted in us leaving California and going to Pennsylvania. And it was very deep betrayal by our very dear friends, who are still our dear friends. And, so we went, I prayed, God, take us someplace where we could get healed, and he took us to Pennsylvania, where we didn't know a single person. I mean, he very sovereignly took us there. Wow. We didn't know a single person. And for the first 6 months, wondering what our crime was, why God was punishing us. And we got there like at the end of October. And,
you were in Pennsylvania after living in California.
Beginning of winter.
This gray, cold
winter
with no friends, no community, no place we could go where we got. And I'd cried out, and I asked God, hey, take us someplace where we can be healed. And our friend Lonnie Frisbee was our friend, Lonnie, and
no way,
and
that's
with
crazy.
John Rutke in San Diego. They were doing this thing. They wanted us to come work with them, and we just knew it wasn't right. God kept closing doors, and so we ended up in Pennsylvania. And there, at the deepest level, we got through forgiveness. Forgave and forgave and forgave and forgave until, and then it turned out our arrival in Pennsylvania had been prophesied to some other people, but we didn't know that. We were just
cool.
We're dying. And then we ended up in a place of leadership. And so the first thing we did was invited our friend, the one that had so deeply betrayed us, to come preach, And so there was a real reconciliation.
Wow, that's huge.
Yeah, he walked in our house, he started weeping and asked us to forgive him,
that's huge.
It was nothing evil. It's just immaturity flashing, and so
it happens.
So we became great friends. He died about 12 years ago, early from a brain tumor. But when he died, we were his best friends, and we've helped the church that we grew from.
That is a powerful testimony.
I know. Without that, you can't survive, because bitterness will ruin your life. And then the other thing was
just that. This whole podcast is worth just that. Bitterness will ruin your life.
Oh, it totally will ruin your life, because it's poison, and it's a root. So anything, like if you have a good root, you're going to have good fruit. If you have a bitter root, your fruit will actually defile many other people, because that cynicism, that
I know it catches, doesn't it?
Yeah. So that was one.
It's contagious.
One thing that kept us in the race. The other one, which I discovered, was joy.
Hang on. This is so big.
All right, we'll stop. We'll do part 2 later.
No, but in betrayal, it's like this, you invited him back. That was like that just smacked the devil in the chops, man.
Right. Actually, when we came back, because after he was there, and I preached this message on offense and how offenses must come, but woe to them, and told the story of how we were best friends, but we stopped working on maintaining the friendship, and it resulted in almost killing both of us. And so he said, "Come tell that story in California." So I came back.
And his church?
Yeah.
Oh my
Which had been our church. We were co-pastors, and then we told the story, which I figured everybody knew, but they're just going to hear it from a different perspective. But the reality was they had never told the story there. They had just kind of said, well, they just left, and and so it just brought healing and joy to the congregation.
Wow.
And so we're still, we're very welcome there at any time,
so incredible
in that congregation, which had been where we grew, when we were baby Christians. So it's nice to have that.
You said the second thing that kept you in the race was joy.
Well, yeah, when we got to Harrisburg, this weird thing happened. The founding pastor of this church that became LifeCenter, he was a young guy. He had been there 10 years, and he just made a big mistake. He left his family, and it devastated the church. He's still my friend too, but it.
So you call father right here, just saying father.
Yeah.
Over here.
But so people were really hurt, and during that time, people would come with accusations because like, how did this great guy, what messed him up? It must have been this guy that came from California, you know. So these pastors and prophets would come with accusations, you know, that it was like Jezebel or some, you know, some like motive, and it's happened repeatedly. It was painful, God, and I always could say, look, I don't want to be here. I don't want to be a pastor, and I would never pick. This is not like something that I want, you know, and I'm here because all this stuff happened. So it leave. The last time this prophet came, and these two prophets and a pastor came, and this one guy was really railing at me. He didn't know me. He had just heard the story, and he was probably a young guy. You know, we were all young then. But
young and stupid. Always
really
young and stupid.
Like preaching at me that, you know, I need to repent and this church is going to be destroyed if I don't, you know, and I didn't do anything. And I had a silent prayer. I said, Jesus, this is really hard. And I heard so clearly, he said, rejoice and be glad. And I thought like, whoa, oh yeah, like Sermon on the Mount. Okay. So I raised my hand and I said, excuse me, Mr. Prophet, I just remembered something important I have to do. So if you can press pause, I'll be back in 3 or 4 minutes. And I ran clear to the other side of the building. It was this big old warehouse building. So I went clear to the other corner, closed myself in the little room, started jumping up and down, saying, thank you, Jesus. I was speaking in tongues, and I was jumping and celebrating, you know, not because I felt like
so awesome.
But when I did, it was like this supernatural joy just
Whoa.
came over me. And it was the last time that those kind of accusations happened. So it was just a big lesson to me on the power of joy.
Oh, you know, my gosh.
Of joy, that joy.
It actually stopped it in the spirit. It stopped that.
Right. Like if you're accused and you get grieved by that, that's the purpose of the accusation. So it'll keep rob your joy.
So the devil's intent is working.
Wow.
But if you rejoice and be glad, it's like
it destroys the devil's works.
I think so.
Anyway, oh my gosh, it did.
You definitely it did.
2 keys.
You definitely exude that. You exude joy everywhere you go.
Oh, we're totally out of time.
We're so out of time.
We are not even going to stop. We're going to stop, but we're not going to. We're going to do part 2.
We have to. That was barely skimming the surface.
I know.
Thank you. Is there a website people can find out where you're speaking, what your books are?
Yeah. How do we find your schedule?
Oh well, our church website is LCMI LifeCenter Ministries International.org.
Okay.
And I think it's also LifeCenter.tv.
Okay.
I'm not very good at marketing myself, so
that's great.
The other guys have done this stuff, but you can buy the books and stuff there. And
cool.
On the website.
My only book, Glow in the Dark, is on Amazon and Kindle. Cool. And then there's a chapter I did in, Sean Foyt did this project, Sean and Andy did this project, Integrity. I think your mom wrote a chapter in that. I wrote a chapter in that.
Cool.
On love as the basis of integrity. So, and then this book I'm just about finished writing on Obed-Edom, who was this totally unqualified Philistine who was blessed by God by hosting the presence, and it catalyzed a transition in David's life. And I mean, you know, if you think about it, it changed the world, you know, because the little struggling tribal kingdom became a great empire. The Psalms were written, the throne of David and God being enthroned, all of these things, and God's heart for the nations was all released during that season. But the catalyst for it was a Philistine. and if you look through carefully, he actually was drafted by David and became a Levite. He became a doorkeeper and a singer in the temple, and 68 of his relatives.
Gosh, bring him in, God.
Yeah.
Isn't that
awesome.
crazy?
I think they were the tech support for the ark, you know.
Come on.
He was the first guy that it didn't kill.
Yeah.
From David's perspective.
Yeah.
So that's fun.
That's incredible. We look forward to that.
I can't wait for that.
Yeah. One more time, the website, LCMI
.org.
.org.
Yeah,
Awesome.
and it's LifeCenter Harrisburg. You can
LifeCenter Harrisburg.
put that into a search engine.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming. We definitely want you back when you're back in LA.
Yes.
All right.
Braving the traffic.
Yeah. Hey, all right.
Yes, and
God
thank
bless
you
you.
to everyone who is listening. You can find us on iTunes. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel.
Download the app on your phone.
Download the app.
We've got an Iris Global app, so you can pull up all the podcasts.
Check out the LifeCenter in Harrisburg website for more on Charles and to see his book that's coming out.
Yeah.
And
wait for part 2. Charles Dog.
Yeah.
We can't wait.
Bye, guys.
Thank you. Bless you guys. See you next time. This podcast is presented by Iris Global. For more information or to support the work of Iris Global, please visit us online at irisglobal.org.